All right, everybody, we got another consensus ranking video for you tonight. We're actually jumping into the galaxy far, far away, doing a Star Wars video, and this is one I think all of us are excited about because I think that's kind of the franchise for us in terms of things that or the intellectual property, whatever you want to call it, the one that we kind of resonate with the most, or maybe used to. What I don't know. We'll see how everybody else feels about it tonight. But yeah, we got the usual gang with us. Scoozel's in the house. Schultz is here, and then obviously yours truly. But we've also got a couple of esteemed guests tonight. So we got Andrew and Megan. Yeah, esteemed. But we got Andrew and Megan with us tonight. They are some good friends of mine, but also they have a bit of a podcast of their own. So I'm just going to give them a sort of a brief moment before we get started to talk about what they do. So guys, y'all just give
go ahead.
your thoughts on that.
Hey, yeah, our podcast is called the Daystrom Dropouts. Essentially, we are just going through the Star Trek catalog in order of star date. So we're currently in our first series, which is Star Trek Enterprise. But we watched the show. We are the Daystrom Dropouts, so we do very little research. We mostly just rant. We accidentally turned our last episode into a 9/11 remembrance pod.
It's just that kind of podcast. If you on Reddit, there's a subreddit called the Daystrom Institute, which is a reference to this like research place in Star Trek where like all the think tanks come together and research and do stuff. There's a Star Wars equivalent on Reddit called the Maul Institution, and it's sort of kind of like where people just ask questions like, wait, why are Rebels lasers red versus Imperial green? You know, it's like, why? And they try to give like an actual explanation for it. Of course, it's kind of taboo to come up with like an actual, or instead of just saying, well, it's a television show or it's a movie, like, you can't say that. It's like, you have to come up with a reason why. But unfortunately, it kind of all boils down to there's, every show has sound in space, which isn't true. And it's kind of like the unspoken thing. You can't bring that up. So the Daystrom Dropouts, like, we're really bad at researching our stuff. So we're just like, we didn't get into the Institute. So that's kind of our.
No, we got in. We just dropped out.
Yeah. I don't, in another universe maybe, but that's where the name comes from.
Yeah, so. It's very low, maybe very uncerebral Star Trek discussion.
We try to where it's not too stupid. We're not just like the whole time. We try to put some thought into it, but it started because we would always find ourselves pausing episodes of shows that we watch, and we would end up talking to each other for like 2 hours. And then we'd be like, we can't finish the series. We have to keep going, And so we finally just like, let's just put it into some sort of media outlet so we can kind of get our brain thoughts out there, because sometimes we'd have really good discussions and sometimes it wasn't very good discussions, but that's kind of what we wanted to do. Plus, we both grew up watching Star Trek. And so it's kind of a way to rewatch stuff and relive some of these shows that we hadn't seen in a long time, or we may or may not have watched a million times over. So, but that's kind of the thing. And of course, we're just as big Star Wars fans. So we're not one of those like, Star Trek's better than Star Wars. No, we're equally nerd. I mean, let's see.
They probably can't see it because it's blurred.
I was about to say, your background.
I don't have all my Star Wars. In our house in Huntsville before we moved, I had an entire corner of my room that was just a Star Wars corner. I got like a workbench that you can buy for your garage, and she like spray painted the linoleum pegboard, kind of this like Durasteel rusted look. And then I put all my old Star Wars toys that I had, in boxes as a kid put up, and all these memorabilia from like, Disney and stuff. So it looked like a lightsaber crafting bench, but it was like toys and stuff. So I got a picture of it somewhere. I'll have to send you guys because I'm kind of proud of it. And we moved in and haven't put it up because now we have a child and we don't have room anymore for ourselves. So,
well,
but
I think yeah, that's who we are. To that a little bit, but the good news for you is we basically do a lot of rant and rambling on this channel with not always
good,
not a lot of research
Johnny.
always. So
We're
Johnny
amongst
does a lot of ranting and raving.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. There's
I'm
other
gonna-
people on here to do, but this is the perfect opportunity to spill your guts on what you think about Star Wars. And just to preface for the people watching, this is a consensus ranking video, and it is completely subjective. So you're going to find a lot of things on here that you're going to disagree with. This is not Rotten Tomatoes top 100 best Star Wars things of all time. This is
as if they have credibility anyway. I mean, it's Rotten
But I'm just
Tomatoes.
saying, it's not like
That's fair.
we're not going on critic and audience scores.
very fair.
Purely based off of our subjective opinion on these things. And so just keep that in mind as you watch. We've compiled all 5 of our rankings lists together, and we've averaged them out into one solid 1 through 29 rankings. So tonight we're going to be going through 29 through 21. We go from worst to first. And so that's what you're going to be seeing tonight. But yeah, so we're just going to jump right into it. And please, if you like what we do here, just subscribe, give us a like, comment, please, and let us know where you would have these ranked. And let's have some productive discussion, and not just like, hey, your picks suck, but tell us like, hey, why do you disagree with us? Tell us and give us what you would do in that situation. So, because these lists take a lot of effort to do. It's not an easy thing to rank all these. So yeah, just let's be productive about it and have some fun with it. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Number 29, and it's going to be The Acolyte. There's a lot that can be said with this one. It's one that's obviously fresh for a lot of us because it's the most recent Star Wars thing that's come out. And so I think, and we've actually done a review on the full season if you want to take a look at our full thoughts. But yeah, just check that out. But yeah, this was to say the least, a controversial show. And so the fact that it is at 29 is probably not a surprise to a lot of people. But we're going to talk a little bit about why that is, because obviously me and Schultz and Scoozle have it all at the bottom of our list. But we're going to let our guests go first, since y'all have it a lot higher than we do.
Personally, we loved The Acolyte. I really enjoyed seeing Force users that weren't Jedi. I also, of course, the part of the political thing is that it has a very female-dominated cast, which, as a woman, I did really enjoy. But I really enjoyed the story. I loved seeing the Danthomirian witches.
They weren't Danthomirian.
They weren't Danthomirian, were they? The Night Sisters. Sorry.
They thought they were. No, they're not Night Sisters. They're just
Night Sisters.
Kind of this rogue coven. Is that what they called them?
Well, either way.
They're very Night Sister-esque.
Yes, and I like the Night Sisters. But I really enjoyed it personally. That's just my take. I enjoyed, like I said, my favorite part was seeing Force users that weren't predominantly Jedi.
I really liked it because every episode I had no idea what was coming up next. If I'm not mistaken, this is one of the first live action shows we've had that is a prequel, or like early older. Is it considered Old Republic? Is that right?
I think
It's
so, yeah.
considered High Republic.
High Republic,
go.
barely, not by much though.
Barely, yeah.
That's the first time we've seen that in a while. Of course, I really like the cast. I think the casting was good. The girl's name that is she plays Trinity in the Matrix. It's completely escaping me.
We're dropouts. We don't know anything.
She was in the Matrix. She played Trinity. She was the female Jedi at the very beginning.
It's Carrie.
It was really
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was really cool seeing her again on screen, and the fact she had a green lightsaber, I think, had to be a callback to the Matrix. Just saying, if it wasn't, then it was Kismet. It had to be. So, and I'm a huge Matrix fan, so that was cool. I understand the criticism of it. A lot of the new stuff that's coming out, it's not that I disagree with the criticism. I just think it's a little too harsh because there's a lot of political overtones and rewriting of some norm, what we know as normal Star Wars, quote unquote. I get it, but I thought it was really good. There were some points, I understand the criticisms, but I don't necessarily agree with the severity of it. It was, I think, The acting was actually pretty good.
The acting was phenomenal.
I think the choreography was very good. Of course, any of these new shows that are coming out don't look bad. I don't think anybody could ever say they look bad. They're definitely visually really good. You can tell they put a lot of thought into the visual universe. Writing, however, is a point of contention, but it definitely looked Star Wars, felt Star Wars. But that's a harder thing to conjure up, I think, these days. What feels Star Wars and what doesn't feel Star Wars, because it's
a bit
how long
subjective.
is the series? Yeah, it's very subjective. Everybody has a feeling that's different, but you still have to kind of tap into that common denominator, which is very difficult for writers and directors and even actors to kind of please the audience.
Especially when you're fighting with nostalgia.
Exactly. So I get it. I get the criticism. I just thought it was very well done as a whole. If I had to say one thing I didn't like about it was they didn't flesh out who these Force user, this all female, potentially lesbian Force coven was. But you know what? We had a discussion about that when we were watching. I was like, so wait a minute. I mean, yes, the Night Sisters obviously intermingled with males and the Zabrak that lived on Dathomir and stuff. But there was heavy overtones in the old EU with the Singing Mountain Clan on Dathomir that they weren't very straight. I mean, they all lived. I mean, it was all female society. So I don't know. I didn't think that was like, oh, they're trying to push this. It's kind of an understood thing in all female society. I mean, I don't know. It's a little implied. Maybe that's just my boy brain going that way.
And it kind of reflected, how in The Phantom Menace, Anakin's mother talks about there was no father.
Yeah.
And in here with the twins, there was no father. So there's a little reflection in that,
a little
like
bit
the
of
power
that.
of the Force and life.
The whole Force conception is something that wasn't really fleshed out by George Lucas either. Kind of like midichlorians. He brought it up, and then it was just kind of like, midichlorians are important, and then
we never heard
from it again. So, there's a lot I could say. I think one of the main problems with the new shows, however, is that there is a tone, there is an aesthetic that can be perceived as kind of like Gen Z Zoomer kind of a feel with casting, haircuts, and I know it sounds kind of stupid. I think about like the Chad Zoomer, like Wojak meme, where he's got like the haircut, and it's like, it's like Force lesbians, and it's just everyone's like, no, this isn't Star Wars. I get it, but I think the criticism is a little bit too harsh. I think it will probably age a little better over the years. I just think a lot of fans are sensitive to change and stuff. But for a High Republic show, I thought it was pretty good. I know what I was going to say. The whip lightsaber Jedi master. She was so like just angry the whole show, and Megan she was like, I don't trust this Jedi. I don't trust her. Something's wrong with her. And they never really fleshed that out, with the exception of they showed that kind of implied that it was her fallen apprentice was this mysterious Sith guy. So maybe she had resentment, but they didn't really flesh that out. And I think they had a lot of plots that they were trying to fit into one show. I don't know. It could have been worse though. I liked it.
It's got some. So we're gonna play the devil's advocate. The rest of us are, because
go for it.
We're obviously in our rankings. We're a little bit.
I was like, y'all obviously very much disagree.
I was like, everyone here hates it, obviously.
So it's one of those things, and I'll just start out and I'll be brief because I think y'all have already hit a lot of the points. But I think so. Something we typically try on this channel is to view everything strictly from like an artistic standpoint. Sure, we might mention political stuff here and there, but really it's just about how does the film stand on its own merits in terms of its writing, its characters, its world building, things like that. And so I think we talked about that a little bit in our review, but to be honest with you, and I know there's a lot of people that didn't like it because of that, but rarely am I like put off by a show that's got some of that in it if the show is well made. And so the issues I have with this one goes beyond that to for me, it's always, and I've said it a million times on our videos. For me, everything good or bad about a show or movie starts with the writing, and it starts with the characters, and everything that I enjoy about movies and shows stems from that. And so, if you start out a show with bad writing and bad characters, it's like you've lost me. And so, the way this show was for me was there's a lot of just unexplained plot points or poorly fleshed out plot points. Basically, the characters are uh, just placeholders to move the story along. You don't really learn a
Yeah.
lot about the characters themselves. Like a lot of them are just there and then they're gone, and you really don't know their motivations, what drives them. It's just like they're just kind of there to move the story along. And so, to me, that's one of the things that bothered me about it. And there's just so many different plot points where it's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense. So like the whole situation, I'll just throw a short example out there. If like we talked about this in our review, but it's like the example of the Padawan when they do the flashback episode where all the Jedi are on the planet. They're doing this scientific study. And the one Padawan who's played by the guy from he's in Game of Thrones. He's in
Yes.
1917, and but
It was the
Tobin.
Game of Thrones.
yeah, the actor escapes me. But the thing is, like, basically, he does everything he does. He puts the whole group at risk, all because he wants to go home. And I'm like, that is the dumbest explanation I've ever heard. Somebody just go
Was
off.
it just a whiny Jedi he didn't like too much? He's like, I want to go home.
It's like that's a very small example, but it was the first one that came to my brain. But like it's things like that. It's the way that characters would do things, not because it made sense to the plot, but because they needed them to do it to move the plot forward. And so
Yeah.
I hate that sort of shoehorned or contrived way of writing a script. Because really the
I think
story
that's
needs to
very
feel
common in
organic.
today's
So-
media. I think that's common in today's media. They'll just kind of drop people in to move it along to get where they're going, with not just Star Wars and just new shows in general. They'll just throw a bunch of people at you, and then by episode 3, you're only really seeing 4 of them again, and you're just kind of like, "Who are what was all that?" So
well,
I get that.
make me care about the characters, and that's the thing. Like at the end of this show, I didn't care what happened to basically any of the characters, and it was just like you haven't made me care about what happens to any of these characters. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know what Schultz and Escuzel would say to that effect, but
I think my main pet peeve about it was that they kind of advertised it as like a crime, like mystery, like movie in a way, where like they had like murder mystery, I guess, like type of show. And I think they kind of like just went away from that, like after the first episode. And so like that's what most intrigued me about the wanting to watch the show was for that reason. And then they kind of just didn't really dive into that at all. And I kind of like maybe not be intrigued anymore with the show. And so I was just kind of like forcing myself to watch it at that point. And also just like the writing, I just think the writing was kind of all over the place. There was a lot of plot holes. There was things that they just left unanswered that needed to be answered and didn't happen. And yeah, I mean, like the one thing I do like about it, though, I think the action was good. I thought a lot of the fight scenes were honestly really great, especially that first one you see of, I don't know what they call him, the main villain, the stranger, I think, right?
Milo Ren.
Yeah, Smiler Ren, yep.
Ren.
That first fight scene with him was amazing. I love that fight scene. And I like that they kind of added a little bit of like almost like kung fu type of fighting into it as well. Like that was really cool. But other than that, like that was really the only thing that like kept me wanting to kind of watch it was just the fight scenes. Like everything else was just kind of bland and just again all over the place.
I think this show suffers from a lot of streaming shows. That's kind of, I want to say production's kind of rushed compared to like a movie where you can lay it out and it's longer to get it out there. So that kind of leads to a lot of what we're talking about, right? It almost seems like the writing is a little lazy, but I think it's just because it's rushed, and then which led to some plot holes, and then that also what Johnny was talking about with kind of flat characters, like don't really care much about them, and then that also leads to maybe some uninspired visuals. I know they look good, but there's not. And then the world building was not there for me. I read a lot of the High Republic books, and they did a really good job of the world building. But this show just didn't. I mean, and it could have been because of the rush. The main thing I didn't like was the kind of unnecessary lore changes. Like, just an easy example, Kiadi Mundi. It's not supposed to be that old, but I know
Oh
people
yeah, I
are like,
forgot about that.
Oh, I completely forgot about that too. Yeah, that was so
I
weird.
remember being that brought up on
That's
like
not a big
Reddit, and I
deal,
was like,
but,
"Oh,
like-
he's not that old. Why is he there?" Unless was he credited in like IMDb as that same character?
Yeah.
or was it just like the same rate?
No,
No,
it
really?
was
character.
him.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was him,
And
yeah.
so I think on
Him and
Wiki,
Oda
I
be ancient.
believe on Wiki they actually changed his date of birth as well.
They
I
did.
believe,
Wow.
to, like, kind of
Wiki-
cover it up almost. So
On Wikipedia, they went because someone had screenshots of it. They actually changed it after the show came out, so that
Wow.
hoping people wouldn't notice. And that's Star Wars fans. They always
The
notice.
internet always notices.
Oh.
I'm just that stuff like that. It's like unnecessary lore changes. I'm not a huge fan of. So, with all
Schultz, you
the-
made a good point about like how it was started as like a mystery kind of show. They announced the Acolyte being a show a long time ago. Like, I don't have a date, but it wasn't like 2 or 3 years. It was like 10 years ago. It was a long time ago that the name was there. So they had been,
This was when Disney bought.
yeah, because I remember they had this like long-term plan, and I remember seeing on the screen like all the different times. And this was a long time ago. It was over 10 years ago, I think, maybe just under 10 years. And I remember I was more excited for this show than any other show that was announced, because old Sith legends and stories and all the Star Wars games I've played ad nauseum, that really like perked my interest, because there's been no show or movie that's really focused on a bad guy. Specifically, maybe just like 100%. So I thought maybe this would be a really old story of like not even High Republic era, but like maybe the first Sith or maybe the first few Sith. They've never really fleshed that out other than in books and shows. So I was really excited for it. So the fact that it moved the time up a little bit, I was a little disappointed about that, because it kind of hinted at it being just some sort of just Sith story by themselves without any.
Didn't they like advertise it as like Frozen meets Kill Bill or something?
That's what
when they first announced it.
That's
I
what
think
the showrunner said she was wanting to
Yeah.
do. And I watched the show and I was like, I don't see Frozen or Kill Bill in this.
Neither.
No.
Maybe the choreography of Kill Bill, but that's about it.
if it was like more like Kill Bill, I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more though. I
I know.
Well, let's jump over to 28. I think we've said about all we can with that one, but yeah, controversial. I think it'll be talked about, good or ill, for years to come. And I don't know. It will be interesting to see, 10 years from now where people kind of have it. But for now, we have it at 29. So,
And I mean, even though we have it higher, I don't disagree with any of y'all's critiques.
Yeah, I don't either.
I just really enjoyed it.
Right.
and if you can enjoy stuff that we consider terrible, like, good for you. I mean, that's good
Yeah.
that you can find
That's
enjoyment
good.
in that. For us, it was
That's
just pure
that's a good
misery
thing about
watching it.
Star Wars.
Anyone
Right.
can like
Something
it.
for everybody.
Nope.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, 28. It is. This one will be a fun discussion to have.
Rough.
Garbage.
So I'm going to start here, not because I'm not obviously first or last, but I always have kind of a funny anecdotal story about this movie, because I think, Ethan, you were with me when we went and watched this. But we had like a big group go with us, and we went, watched it. I mean, we were all pretty excited because, even though there were things about The Force Awakens we didn't like, we were excited for the direction that it kind of took everything. And so we went to this one like super excited. Trailers looked good. We all watched it. We get out of the theater, and we're out in the lobby area there, and everybody's kind of buzzing about it. And of course, they all turn to me because I'm the cynical one in the group. And and they're like, they're all like, "Oh, this was great. This might be the best one I've seen since Empire Strikes Back." Like somebody said that.
That was Brian, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and
Of
and
course,
then
it was
they
Brian.
all turned to me and they're like, "What did you think?" And I said, "I kind of hated it," and they were like, "What?" And that, like, for me to say that, I don't know that I'd ever said that about anything Star Wars in my life. I mean, I'd always found some kind of enjoyment in it, but this
Right.
was just one of those movies that sucked the joy out of a lot of it, because it basically takes everything that's interesting and going somewhere with The Force Awakens and basically throws it on its face. And it's like that. I mean, in simplest terms, and it's just one of those that I can go a million. I can make a million different points, and I'll try to keep it brief because I know other people hit on a lot of those as well. But to me, this is the point in the franchise where you see this big group of apathetic fans right now that really don't watch anything anymore. Like, this movie is why they don't watch anymore, and
Correct.
that's hard thing to like admit for some people, but it's like, no, I remember the social media threads and the videos and the conversations I had with people. I mean, like, my coworkers know I hate this movie, and they don't even watch Star Wars, and they will say, "Yeah, Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie ever," just to make me mad, So,
They could say Auburn was the worst team ever, and you would get less mad, right?
Probably.
that would be
It's more true, probably. But it's just one of those things that it's one of those movies that genuinely the story is boring for large portions of it. There's a few aspects with Rey and Kylo Ren that are kind of interesting. Obviously, seeing Mark Hamill back as Luke Skywalker is great, even though he's criminally character assassinated in this movie. But it's one of those things where, like, I could go on and on and on about the different things that are wrong with this movie. But one of the things that I remember distinctly about sitting and watching it was I just felt bored for large portions of it. And I was like, that should never happen in a Star Wars movie. And so, I mean, I'm going to leave it at that. I mean, I despise this movie, and I've watched it, I think, twice or three times. I watched it 2 times in theaters because I went back a second time just to make sure I wasn't crazy. I wasn't crazy. And then I watched it a third time after I did like a marathon of them for Rise of Skywalker, and I don't think I've watched it since then. So I actually used to own this movie, and I took it and gave it to like a used bookstore or something because I was like, I'm never going to watch this again. So, but
I didn't hate it as much as Johnny did, but if I completely ignore all the controversial choices that Rian Johnson made, like in regards to the treatment of Star Wars lore and the characters, just ignore all that, there's still like a whole laundry list of qualms that I have, like just in terms of storytelling, that Johnny mentioned a lot of them. Like, the pace is a big problem for me. You kind of start fast and then it's like dead stop.
I mean, they spend like an hour and a half, just the two ships going chasing each other through space, shooting each other for like an hour and a half. And I'm like, can we do something else, please? Like,
in my brain, I've always referred that as the white Bronco O.J. Simpson chase in space.
That is too on point, I think.
Forever.
And, like, I guess one example of the character qualms that I have, like Poe Dameron, not a bad character in episode 7, but his whole arc in the whole film is basically just the human cost of vain heroism, I guess. And like the one that, everybody would expect him to clash with, Leia, like, yeah, he does a little bit, but then she's in a coma for the third of the film. And he clashes with Holdo, who's like, who is that? Like,
completely new character.
Who's this person?
Yeah. So just wasting Leia kind of in a coma just kind of seemed pointless. That's just one example, specific example, but just stuff like there's a lot of choices that were made like that I just character wise that I just didn't really like.
Yeah, I actually was really excited to go see this too, just because of Ryan Johnson. Because I mean, he wrote Looper. I love Looper. I thought that was a great movie. He also was a director. All right, I don't know about all that. He also directed some of the Breaking Bad as well. So I was like, okay, well, this is
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
gonna be hopefully decent. And just going into it, just wasn't. Like, I hated the Finn and Rose side story that they had going on in there. Like, that was just not intriguing. It was very boring. It just was unneeded. It just, nothing was great about that. And then we get to the Luke Skywalker story part of it, and he's just like a hermit, just living in the middle of nowhere, and we have to go find him. And like, it just another boring aspect of the movie. It just feel like it didn't like do anything plot wise, I feel like. And then we get to the Luke Skywalker Kylo Ren fight that could have been so good. And then you come to find out that he's not even actually there fighting him like that. Like, I just didn't care for that at all. I thought that was dumb. I thought that was not something they should have done. Like, it just defeated the purpose of him fighting his Padawan, pretty much. Like, I don't know. It just, that I didn't like. And then also the ending to it, Snoke dying. Like, he's literally the main villain, is what we know pretty much of the mastermind behind a lot of these new movies now, and then to just kill him off in the second movie was just
without any backstory either. Like
nothing. We don't know anything about him, and
Yeah.
like, just terrible writing. Like, I just don't get like why you're gonna introduce this big bad villain who's almost like a crime boss to Kylo Ren, and
played by a great actor too.
yeah, Andy
Yeah.
Serkis, dude. Like,
Yeah, how do you waste Andy Serkis, for crying out loud?
literally. And that was just terrible. The only thing I liked about this movie was literally the scene when Rey and Kylo Ren are fighting the I can't remember what they're called. The
Praetorian Guard.
Yes, and the only part I like about that fight scene was when she threw the lightsaber to Kylo Ren and he just clicked it right in the dude's head. And that was it. Like, that was probably the coolest thing about the entire movie for me. And that was it. That was the only thing I enjoyed. Like, everything else,
give your good anecdote about me and Last Jedi. And how
Yeah,
you-
start
the
my
room
opinion.
changed.
I'll start my opinion with that. For quite literally months after we saw The Last Jedi, we'd be sitting there like watching TV, eating dinner, and suddenly Andrew would just get this look, and the literal aura of the room would change. And I'd go, "What are you thinking about?" He'd go, "Last Jedi." He was just so upset about it. Like, we'd be having a great time, and he would just suddenly get morose. But yeah, the only reason why The Last Jedi isn't number like 29 on my list is because there are several shows that I didn't see.
I was about to say, our list is going to be a little different.
Yeah.
We haven't seen all of it.
I meant
So
to preface
if
that.
we could have this as 29 plus, we would.
I would have
Yeah.
this as 30.
No, I meant to preface that too. There will be some on
Yeah.
on Megan and Andrew's rankings that'll have asterisks next to them, and that'll be the ones that the reason they're ranked where they are is because they haven't seen them, and so we put them at the bottom of their list. So, but
Yeah.
thankfully, because of the way the formula works, it really doesn't affect the rankings that much. So that's just kind of the way we had to do it. But yeah, I meant to kind of preface that at the beginning.
But yeah, going into this movie, like y'all, I was really excited because Force Awakens set it up for a great sequel. I was so ready. And then so much of the show, plot-wise, was completely pointless. From, like we said earlier, like the 25 miles per hour speed limit chase scene, the Casino Royale in space, all of that it turned out to just be completely pointless. The only thing that really had any plot significance was the death of Snoke and Rey and Kylo getting some like one-on-one chemistry time, and Finn waking up from his coma. Those were the only things at the end of the day that really mattered at all. Visually, it's what really disappointed me were the visuals, especially the costuming. Like in the prequel movies and even the originals, we had some great otherworldly costuming. It was very alien, with still feeling very artistic and unique. But then when we finally see some characters and planets outside of Jeddah and outside of the Rebels, it's guys in tuxes and women in evening gowns. And that really bothered me because the costuming, especially on Coruscant in the prequels, is just so different, futuristic.
And Naboo as a whole.
And Naboo as a whole. I mean, Queen Amidala's closet, please. But as much as all the pointlessness of the entire movie, the costuming is what really disappointed me the most. I don't go to see a space movie to see a guy in Monaco in a tux. And that was honestly my biggest qualm.
I remember you even saying that in the car. Where to begin?
I was going to say, keep it brief because it'll get...
Where to begin? If Swiss cheese could be a movie, The Last Jedi would be it, because it had some giant holes and some meat to it. Scene by scene, sometimes shot for shot, it has really good moments, like really good moments, Star Wars moments. And then the next scene, you're just like, what? Right off the top of my head, Luke and R2 sitting around the game table in the Millennium Falcon having a moment. My camera's kind of fuzzing me out there. Great moment. I mean, really heartfelt moment. You know, he hasn't seen his droid in a long time. The porks are amazing. Kylo Ren and I almost said Daisy Ridley. I guess that counts. Kylo Ren and Rey's fight scene, very good. And then you got the Canto Blight kerfuffle, and it's just useless. And then they're running away on animals, and it's a zoo break, and they're like, "Free the animals! Capitalism is bad. Look at all these scumbags." And then they're back to the space, running away from lasers arcing in space, which is always bothers me. You know, it's like almost scene for scene. There'll be moments where I was just like, "Ooh, great moment." And then Yoda talking to Luke, you know, his little moment where he's like, you know, our students, are results of us. He has that good one-liner that kind of, I can't remember, but good moments, and then horrific moments, horrifically bad moments, character assassinations, obvious political overtones woven in that just wasn't needed in a Star Wars movie. I mean, you can do good and evil, but I mean, like, war profiteers. I mean, I was just like, oh my God, like I just couldn't stand it. And then Snoke. That's, I could write a thesis on that.
And he's spoken said thesis to me.
I mean, Andy Serkis is.
She's like, he's giving me the thesis. It exists.
I know it exists. I've heard it.
Andy Serkis is one of the greatest actors ever, and the fact they even cut him out, trying to subvert expectations by killing the main villain is one thing. I mean, I kind of understand that, but gosh, I just don't know why they did it. The Rose and Finn was terrible. The force projection by Luke was interesting, shows his ability in the force had come a long way, but not needed. Him not even really getting
interesting, but in terms of force abilities, but the fact that they'd already assassinated his character and then he goes out like that is like, I think basically forces everybody to go, yeah, that's cool, but you suck because you just did this to this character. So, and
he was so grumpy and angry, and that's just not the Luke Skywalker character. Like, he was a completely different character. Now we all get older. We all, trauma affects us differently. Failure affects us differently. Luke had been through some stuff. He had, he was the last Jedi forever, and he had lost students, and he had seen, the Empire fall and his dad die, he found out was Darth Vader. I mean, he's been through some stuff, but for him to run away and hide just didn't feel like Luke. If anything, him turning to the dark side a little would be a little more forgiving in a plot point, because he's struggling with these failures to a point. But him running away, that's not Luke Skywalker. Him giving into some anger and frustration a little bit more, because he was waylaying on Vader on the Death Star right there at the end of the Return of the Jedi, and having that Skywalker blood in you kind of have a tendency to get a little angry sometimes. So I don't know, just gosh, it's just every scene, if you go back and watch it again, John, just I'm serious, scene by scene, just think like filmography. There's some scenes you can like green check mark, and then you're like, oh, terrible, and it's just like X and O's through the whole.
I don't think I
movie.
want to subject myself to that again.
Well, just don't do it. Don't do it sober, and you can get through it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. The costuming was an interesting point. I thought visually it looked really good. There was a lot of cinematography they did that was fantastic with the movie, but like the only good part of the movie really is
was Kylo.
Yeah. No, the fight scene with Kylo Ren and Rey, that's very well done. That was great. That was really good. And my final thought is, if it wasn't for Daisy Ridley and Adam Driver's acting ability, that movie would have been an even more disaster than it is. They carried the movie. So their one-on-one screen chemistry probably kept a lot of even worse backlash that Disney got with that. But I think they're acting on screen together as a couple probably saved the movie from being a complete and total failure, which I think it is pretty close. And that's 1% of my opinion on The Last Jedi.
I was just say a lot of people would agree. Oh, and I haven't even scratched the surface of what I think about it. And I'm just gonna move right along before I devolve into that. But all right, so 27 is gonna be there you go. The Rise of Skywalker.
Number 5.
Whoa.
That's a hot take, I feel like now.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
I feel like this is one of those movies, and I'll explain a little bit why I have it as high as I do, because I don't feel like, for me, the reason it is as high as it is on my list is because it's watchability. And this is one of those movies that, despite all its myriad of problems, it has a frenetic, entertaining pace to it that makes it easy to sit through nearly 3 hours of a movie, because there's always something going on. It's moving the entire time. Now, a lot of that is because it has to do a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. And it also has to fill in a lot of holes that the last movie made. But the reason to me this movie is as bad as it is because of The Last Jedi and the problems that it caused.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have this movie ranked below The Last Jedi because it's really, in a lot of ways, it's a mess of a movie, because it's like a bunch of different colors of Play-Doh all shoved together, to make a colorful mess. And it's just like, it's one of those things that the movie itself feels like 10 different movies thrown together, and there's no cohesiveness to a lot of it. It's obviously, there's a lot of retcons that happen in this one to, in its defense, make up for the problems of the previous movie. But it's kind of a shame, because there's some really great moments in this one, but I feel like a lot of people just didn't care at that point, because a lot of people were turned off after Last Jedi. And so I think that's kind of where I'm at, is like the reason. I remember going into the movie with I was already pretty low expectations because of The Last Jedi. And I was like, I just want to be able to sit and like be entertained to some degree. And even though there's a lot of this movie I didn't like, it at least entertained me for large portions of it. So that's why it's a little bit higher. And I think the fact that I could kind of turn my brain off and not care as much, because I'd already been burned by the last movie, I think helped me to enjoy it a little bit more. But when I went back and rewatched it after seeing it in theaters, it did not age well at all. So like, it's not a good film, but it's at least one that if it was on TV and I didn't have anything else to watch, I'd be able to sit and watch it and go, okay, this is kind of entertaining at times, but like, it's not really like, it's got, from a Star Wars perspective, it's got tons of issues. And this one for me I just constantly forgive it, because it's basically a product of the movie before it. And so still don't like J.J. Abrams, but he tried to do what he could with it, and he failed, but that's fine. So
just to go along with that, like the whole sequel trilogy as a whole, right? You write more movies and expand universes to make it bigger. Well, the whole sequel trilogy made Star Wars feel smaller. After this movie, I would say that Star Wars had never felt as small and tired as it did right after this movie. Like you said, each movie just exists to tear down and apologize for what the one before it did. Overall, this movie is just bloated, it's overstuffed, choppy pacing. It's and like you said, I understand that it's still a course correction from The Last Jedi, but this is make sure I say this word right. This is a 10-cent word. Flanderization in action.
Ooh, big word.
Man.
Wow, that's the word of the day.
So I don't know that and we'll talk about it more, maybe in other videos. Original movies did so much to build your iconic imagery and characters, like in a context of them doing the things and bonding while they're doing them. This movie's more meaningful than The Last Jedi, but I don't know. You can trick people for a while by using familiar imagery and music and deconstruct the world with meta humor, but you can just cash that in.
One of the worst things about the sequel trilogy is it's very unoriginal. Like there's very little of it that is new and fresh ideas. Like The Force Awakens, as much as it set up a good path for the sequel trilogy, it is a reboot of A New Hope, like the original Star Wars in terms of the story.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I hated the most about The Force Awakens is the fact that I was like, I've seen this movie before and I've seen it done better. And so it's like one of those things where there's this is a very unoriginal and uninspired trilogy as a whole, because they don't bring you new ideas and concepts that would like Drew was saying, that flesh out the world, make it feel bigger, make it feel more vibrant. It's just okay, people like this stuff, so let's do it, but do it kind of new and kind of different. It's like, well, no, that's not what we're here for. And like most of us hardcore fans, we read the EU stuff, we watch all the TV shows, we might even read some of the comic books. It's like, we know the lore, and so we want to see how you can kind of play in that world and expand on it. And in reality, they just kind of gave us rehashed answers that were a lot worse than the predecessors, and I think that's maybe the biggest sin of the sequel trilogy, and when you look back on it.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to say because I think you guys mostly said most of like what I would say probably as well. I really just don't like the fact that they brought back Sidious as well. I thought that was kind of just annoying because it's like, once again, the whole Snoke storyline, I really would have liked to see more. And then killing him off in the second one just kind of ruined that. And then they bring back Palpatine instead. So it's just like...
Somehow Palpatine is returned.
And, yeah, and so like that annoyed me because it's just like, it's not something new. Like we already seen Palpatine, obviously. So it's just like, I just wanted something new and refreshing. And that they just killed that in the second one. And so the ending was just not great for me. And I don't think the action wasn't really anything crazy for me either. I didn't really think it was like anything I really enjoyed. And I've only seen this movie once. Like I haven't watched it again because like I just don't really care to. So like that probably doesn't help. I honestly don't. Yeah. Well, I just don't remember a whole lot that happened in it too. I feel like it was just kind of like, for me at least, forgettable in a way, just like the second one. So
I think most people were just ready to be done with the trilogy at this point. They were like, I don't even want to think about it anymore.
It's fair. Yeah.
Of the trilogy, this was my most favorite, if there's a word for that. Like this was the pile of poo that smelled the least bad. I'm very much a sucker for a redemption arc, so I really did enjoy Kylo Ren's redemption arc, especially in the end when he's running through the temple with his good boy sweater on and goes and joins Rey. This movie definitely, y'all have touched on it, had some plot points that make no sense. I don't understand why this random Sith dagger is the shape of some wreckage, and it has a little arrow that says your treasure is here. That
And
makes
they
no
just so happen
sense.
to be standing in the right spot at the right
Yeah,
time.
congratulations, you found your quest point. Yeah, it's like this. There were just too many like little pointless things that drove the story forward. We got all these new characters that we're suddenly supposed to care about, just like in The Last Jedi. And with the exception of the redemption arc and just some minor like visual wonderfulness, this movie did not have, like you said, it doesn't have the longevity to stand alone, because it was, of course, trying to fix all the problems that The Last Jedi caused, but it opened up more problems. It opened up more issues, more plot points that were never going to get filled. It was not that great. It was just a little at the end.
I have this movie a lot higher than I intended because of several reasons. It's not because it's really hard to rank
Explain
these.
yourself, sir.
Yeah, I got to explain it. Yeah, I mean, it's higher than Return of the Jedi. It's a wonder you even have me on.
Yeah, that's just sick.
It's
That's sick.
it's very. If there was a decimal, you said sick. If there was a decimal point I could put on, it'd be easier to rank these, because like whole integers is hard, because some of them are better than others. But the reason I really liked this movie was because The Last Jedi was so bad. The Last Jedi was so bad that coming out of it, it was like any port in the storm. Okay. And
you're like, as long as it's not that, this is great.
Yeah. And I conversely really liked Palpatine coming back because of all the extended universe stuff from the Dark Empire comic series, a lot of the video games, him being kind of this reoccurring villain, almost as a I don't know, a satanic character that just can't be killed. I actually really liked, because George Lucas has said, Palpatine is the devil, and he's really, really bad. Him coming back was a callback to a lot of the EU stuff, some of the cloning and from.
I mean, it was pulled right out of Dark Empire. That was the exact.
Yeah, so I really liked that. A lot of the concept art for the new sequel trilogy that was used in The Force Awakens and, well, not Last Jedi, but this, some of the concept art they were trying to do for the whole new sequel trilogy had a lot of Imperial remnant feel to, Star Destroyers crashed in the desert, TIE fighters sprawl, a lot of, the past of the Empire was everywhere. They got away from that in The Last Jedi, but they really doubled down on it a lot with this, with going back to the Death Star 2. And that aesthetic I really, really liked, even in the comics and video games, where there was just remnants of the Empire everywhere. And it didn't just evaporate overnight. Rey being a scavenger in The Force Awakens was a good callback to that. So the crash of Death Star, Palpatine returning, and the concept that, the Emperor had a contingency plan, literally, post-Empire, to come back from the dead. Very, very on brand for a Sith of his caliber. He was talking about cheating death in Revenge of the Sith. Lots of things you could go into that. So him coming back was really big for me. I think Snoke was wasted. I kind of wish they maybe had just brought him back from day one in Force Awakens. People probably would have criticized that. People would have criticized it either way. But him coming back was a big deal to me. Exegol as a planet was very interesting to me. We haven't really seen a Sith planet on live action, and aesthetically it was really creepy. Fight scenes were good. Seeing Han Solo come back and helping him, Kylo, come back to the light side was really good, because in all other Star Wars we see people being tempted by the dark side. Very seldom do we get people tempted by the good side, with the exception of Vader for 5 seconds at the very end of the Return of the Jedi. So his own dad,
and it's a progression through.
So his dad helping him kind of come back was a very powerful moment, especially he was the one that killed him. The Star Destroyer concept with planet killing laser beams is a concept they took from the Eclipse Star Destroyer in the expanded universe. I thought that was interesting. I really liked that. There's just a lot of little things that, even though this is an amalgam of a lot of different concepts and ideas that they tried to fix the trilogy with, it is. I think it actually came together pretty good, all things considered. Unfortunately, this movie is a product of the two movies before it. I have it so high because I was so hyped for it, because I was so mad at the new series. I was so mad that when it came out, I thought I was like, wow, the sequel trilogy has somehow, I feel like it passed by the skin of its teeth. And it was an emotional movie for me because I really liked it. Now, it had plot point issues. But that's the whole sequel trilogy. I mean, that as a criticism for this movie is almost like, duh. I mean, that's the common denominator with the whole sequel trilogy. So saying, oh, it has plot hole issues. It's like, yep, that's the theme, is we do things without meaning. But I think, again, Daisy Ridley and Kylo Ren carried the movie. Their acting was great. Fight scenes were great. I wish they had done more with Daisy. I keep calling her Daisy. Rey going to the dark side. I think that would have been very interesting. What else? Those some slow moments, but the sequel trilogy as a whole is just wasted opportunities. And this movie, I left here feeling much better. Her being a Palpatine is weird. They did not flesh that out at all. They were just like, yep, here's your dad, and his dad is Palpatine. And that was it.
Yeah.
But they didn't flesh out anything in these movies. So, I mean, I actually had this much lower, but the more I thought about it, I felt so much better coming out of the theater. I was like, oh, this is a great movie. So I had to put it up there. I really kind of wanted to put in like 9 or 10, but I don't know. I like the movie, and it's hard for me to put words into it, but I definitely liked it a lot better than the other ones.
We'll forgive you for that ranking, I guess, but we're gonna have to tone it down a little bit going forward. Okay?
It's a 5 with it's not a true 5. It's like I needed to put it up there because I liked it so much more than the other two.